It's going to be difficult, though, isn't it, for the party at the next election? I mean, now we have, sure, the economy providing quite an obvious divide between them about how to handle this, and the Conservative Party, I think, are sort of trying to present themselves now as the party of sound money. Do they need a clearer identity beyond that? I mean, the party has sort of flitted around and experimented with a whole different load of phrases like "broken Britain." It was quite chatty about social mobility for a while. Again, trying to come up with that awful word and narrative about why the Conservative Party should be in power. Do you think they need to firm that up? Ed, you first. I mean, whether you think it's a time of sort of Butsker-like consensus now or not, do they still need to express something more clearly about what they actually want to do with power?
Well, I don't want to get myself in trouble.
Go on.
But I'll try and answer your question honestly. Your question, to a certain extent, is a question about spin and PR, if you like, which most people, I suspect, in this room are very much against. I do think we do need to work harder at presenting a consistent theme to the electorate. I do think that there is a lot of truth in the adage that when you get bored of saying something, that's just at about the moment that people start to hear it, and I do think that we have flitted about. Now, I think that in the last few months, I think the Conservative Party has become much clearer in the face of the economic crisis about making the right noises and setting out the right approach to effectively what could be an age of quite severe austerity, and saying that there will be pain and that it will be there will be very difficult decisions to be made in the run of the election and beyond the election in terms of public spending. I think we have to be clearer that we are a party that believes in low taxation and a party that believes that government can only spend what it can afford. But above all, I think we need to make our message as consistent as possible in the next 6 to 8 months.
Peter.
Interesting that Tories here say that they may make advances on this basis. One of the things which strikes me is that the Tory position in the opinion polls is much exaggerated. At the moment the Conservative Party holds 41% in the polls, but that's actually 28% because only about 2/3 of the people polled are prepared to vote or say there is 1/3 of people questioning opinion polls are simply excluded. No party has ever won a general election on the basis of 41% of the poll, let alone 28%. And the party which is actually making the most progress on the economy...
Labour won it with 36% last time.
...is the Liberal. That's only because you had about 2%. But the Liberal, the only party which is making any progress on the economic front is actually the Liberal Democrats, because of the extremely impressive performance given by Vince Cable. And if you look at the polls, you'll see they're creeping up as a result of that. Nobody is at all persuaded that the Conservative Party has anything interesting to say about economics. And I don't actually see why they should be, ever since the Thornycroft resignation and the little local difficulty of Harold Macmillan, the Conservative Party long ago, sacrificed any claims to probity in terms of public finances. And it never ever raised any protests of this neo-endogenous growth or whatever it is we've been having for the past 13 years while it's going on. So I don't think they should hope for much to come from that. In fact, I would suspect that the Conservative position is going to deteriorate over the next year before the general election, partly because of the extraordinary feebleness of their front bench economics.
And you don't think that would be a bad thing? I mean, I think you're right.
Well, it'd be a great thing. The sooner a whole lot of them are crammed down the climb, the better.
Because I think you've argued before that the Tory party in its current form should be killed off, really, and people shouldn't vote for it. It loses another election, and it expires, and something else can come in its place. And what would that be? What would?
Hang on, the electorate has a tremendous chance in the next election. It's never had it before. You can't sack the government because whichever lot get in, they'll be the same government. They'll do the same things. But you can sack the opposition. If the Tory party fails at the next election, it will actually split and collapse. And there will then be an opportunity to recreate a proper pro-British party which will do intelligent things, like take us out of the big idea of the European Union, which they won't. Localism! They talk about returning power to the people, and yet they subscribe to continuing with the Treaty of Rome, which takes so much power away from the people that only 20% of the legislation which goes through Parliament doesn't now come from Brussels. 80% of it is imposed upon us by the European Union. Why are post offices closing? Because the European Union says they have to close. Where did the Disabilities Discrimination Act come from? It's a European Union directive. Most acts in Parliament are. They won't talk about it because they don't want to fight it. if you actually seriously want to do something about this country, you have to establish national independence. Switzerland can be independent, Norway can be independent. We're only the fourth largest economy in the world, but they think we can't be. It's absurd to listen to them. You can very, very easily come up with a whole series of policies which will be any trouble. Look, the Conservative Party is still so low in most of this country, especially north of the Trent, that most people would rather tandoori their grandmothers than vote for it. It cannot win an election. It's not capable. In Scotland, it's dead. In Wales, it's dead. It can't win an election. If you want a Conservative government, the Conservative Party is the biggest obstacle to having one that you can conceivably imagine. Get rid of it, replace it with something else. You do it with your car, you do it with your fridge, you do it with your lawyer, you do it with your accountant. Why don't you do it with a political party? What is this sort of religious awe we devote to the failed organisation?
Well, what fascinates me about people like Peter, and he's not alone in this, is that these pundits and commentators sit there pontificating every week in their columns with all the influence and no responsibility. They sit there on the sidelines saying what the rest of us should do, but actually don't get involved. They don't actually come up with ideas of what should be done and then go and try and implement them. They leave that to the poor old politicians. I think Peter did try it once, but didn't get selected for the Tory party. Maybe that is responsible for his bitterness at the moment. I mean, he really is the Tony Benn de nos jours. Sort of the Conservative Party didn't get elected in the last 3 elections because it wasn't right-wing enough. I mean, for Christ's sake, is that really what you're saying?
But ad hominem remarks and blasphemy as well. I mean, come on, I'll reply to that in a minute, but I think it possibly is Ed Vaizey's turn now.
Yeah, no.
Maybe you wanted to say
I think we're enjoying keeping this contained duty at the moment. Go on.
Well, you like, okay,
Ed's coming in a minute.
Okay, no responsibility. Give me some. I'd be happy to have some.
So you actually have to get elected, Peter.
No ideas. 2 substantial books, which you're welcome to read and buy. But as for getting elected, do people seriously imagine the process of being elected is a matter of putting yourself as an individual before the public and asking to be elected?
That's a traditional way.
Election in this country is a matter of selection by small groups of people who filter candidates to make sure that they are ciphers, obedient, whip-following. And you do not get past stage 1 of any selection procedure in any party if you are at all troublesome. And even if you do, you are then under the control of the whips and you are immediately suppressed. The idea that you could, if you had ideas like mine, make any progress in any political party is ludicrous to anybody who knows anything about the process. As for the ad hominem stuff, I did many, many years ago put myself forward in a conspiracy with Boris Johnson, not to beat anybody up, but just to make life difficult for Michael Portillo in Kensington and Chelsea. I knew perfectly well he was going to be selected. I didn't for a moment expect to be selected. I had to be put specially on the candidates list to pursue this joke. I have absolutely no bitterness about the matter at all. I couldn't care less. I would have been horrified if I had been selected. And I do wish people would stop purveying this strange, coordinated lie about me, which comes out of all Conservatives whenever I speak. But look, I would love to have responsibility. I would love to be in parliamentary politics. The reason why I make this case against the Conservative Party is precisely because I tried to be. I tried and I thought very hard, how could I, doing what I do, thinking what I think, make an impact upon politics? And I worked out there was no future for me or for hundreds of other like-minded people as long as the Conservative Party stood in the way, fraudulently pretending to represent the interests of conservative people in this country. Get rid of it, and hundreds of people, not just me, will find that the way is open to them to get into Parliament, to become seriously effective in politics. As long as it's there, the only people who will get into Parliament will be whip fodder, political careerists, and social democrats.